Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be diving into the viral series by Lauren Asher called the Dreamland Billionaire series. If you're a fan of romance with a touch of wealth, ambition and flawed characters, this one's for you. So the series consists of 3 books: The Fine Print, Terms and Conditions, and Final Offer. So I'm going to be taking you through my thoughts on the book. This is basically a review and if it's worth the hype or if it's worth the hatred that it gets on the internet. Before reading these books, there are a lot of mixed reviews from people who did not really like it and some people who really loved it. Let me know if you want like a different video of me reading the reviews of this book on Goodreads. We could do that. Each book follows a different Kane brother on their journey to fulfill what their grandfather asked them to do as it pertains his will for them to get their inheritance of 250 billion, I think, if I'm not mistaken, billion or $1 million as their inheritance, and their shares to the company and their voting right as board members. So without further ado, let me break it down for you. So we're going to be starting with book 1 of the series, which is The Fine Print. So the first book starts off with Rowan's character, who is the second son of 3 and grandson to the Kane family founder. The reality where this takes place in is kind of similar to telling a story of Walt Disney's Children, a fictional version. So their grandfather started and founded a amusement park and entertainment company akin to Disney. Well, it's called Dreamland. It follows Rowan, and Rowan's job or Rowan's own obligation for the next 6 months is to be director of the park and to create a new ride that holds up to the legacy of his grandfather. So Rowan is the creative one, but due to his father's abuse and neglect and the death of his mother, he became a jaded character. Not as jaded as his brothers, but jaded nonetheless. In the journey to fulfill his part of the will for his grandfather, Rowan meets Zara, who works at Dreamland, and basically she also has like her own issues and character development throughout the book. But one of the main things is her wanting to be part of like the elite group of people who create rides for Dreamland, and in like a contest submission she kind of like gets into that and ends up creating her own ride. So one line from the book that kind of like perfectly encapsulates the relationship between Rowan and Zara is the line where he says, "You make me a better man even though I'll never deserve you." Something along those lines. Well, that kind of encapsulates the entire struggle of him as a character, struggling with the death of his mother, addiction that his father has, and his father's abuse to him and his brother as children. For the second book, we follow Declan. Declan is the eldest of the 3 brothers. His role for the part of his grandfather's will is to get married and have a child. And obviously, being the insufferable character that Declan is, being the oldest brother and also being the one to be the shield for his family members from his father's abuse. He's a very angry character. I think that's how I would say. I wouldn't say he is the most jaded because that goes to his youngest brother, and we'll talk about him in the last book. But he's very calculative, I would say that. So he has an assistant called Iris, and Iris is the one in charge of basically his entire life. And she was tasked with finding him someone to get married to, which is a crazy statement in and of itself, but his assistant was the one to like interview people and give them the contract. And on the day of the scheduled wedding, the bride pulled out because he said something. He's an insufferable character, at least in the beginning. But yeah, he had a lot of growth, character development along those lines. And also Iris being the one who stepped up to end up getting married to him. It was a lot, but she got married to him based on the contract and to help him get his end of the deal when it comes to delivering what his grandfather asked him to do. Declan's transformation throughout the book is outstanding, great character development, great growth on both parties' ends, honestly, because he ended up not being as insufferable and kind of like understanding the perspective of his brother and being more empathetic towards their struggles. Even though he relatively suffered and he thought he suffered the most, he realized how even his actions in response to his father's drinking problem, how that's also affected his brothers and their growth. A lot of character development went on here. And then there's the last book, which is Final Offer. This is a lot longer than the first two because there's like a lot going on here. So this follows Callahan, or aka Cal, who is the last brother in the series, and he struggles with addiction and his sense of abandonment and basically a failed career in hockey because he got injured, and a lot of self-doubt because of, like I said again, I say it a lot, but his father's abuse. So they have an abusive father who drinks a lot and belittles them since the death of their mother, and which he never got over. So he never dealt with issues and then passed them on to his children. Generational trauma. On a more serious note, this follows Callahan, who has struggled with addiction for the better part of like 10 years since he was a college student playing hockey in the NHL. And then there's Elena, who has known him for as long as she could remember because they grew up together in the summer house in Wisteria. I think that's what that place is called. Those are the three books. Cal's journey is very raw and real and relatable because he has to fight the demons that haunt him within to be able to get to the place where he'll be a lot better for not just Lena and her daughter, but also for himself. His journey to redemption kind of like has you written for him every step of the way, and it makes you interested in having him be a better person and having him see the struggles that got him where he is. So now, the pros and cons of this book. Pros, very engaging trope. So we have a good slow burn, grumpy sunshine with Rowan and Zara. We have a marriage of convenience with Declan and Iris, and we have a second chance romance with Lena and Cal. We have strong characters. Each character didn't leave me wanting some more. It gave what you needed to give in terms of their character development and their understanding of the situation later on, even though there are scenes where you're like, this shouldn't be a misunderstanding, but you understand the process of the character's development as it progresses. They have good, strong female leads. They have their like individual characters that are not just like centered around the male leads. They have good depth to each character and personality that is not stale. It has good emotional depth because it deals with hard topics as abuse and addiction and family trauma and death and grief. So there's a good deal of topics being dealt with in the book. We also have a creative setting, so you would not think to put a lot of people in an amusement park, but it's a good setting. It gives room for a lot of growth. Actually, I even think that the book could probably get a sequel. Like these three could get a sequel that involves their father and their grandfather, because there's a lot of mystery surrounding their grandfather's death. And that in itself could be a story for a different book where we find out what actually happened. If, like, I speculatively suspect that his son has something to do with his death, well, that's just me. I don't like his son. I don't like his character. I don't even remember his name. That's how much I don't like him. As for the cons, predictable plot. Obviously, I don't think I need to explain that. They had some slight pacing issues here and there. Some sections of the book felt slow, and then some sections felt a little rushed. We also have like some repetitive emotional struggles with self-doubt and self-sabotage. I think the best character in terms of character development and character growth and character difference would be Callahan, because he had a lot of more depth to him, to like actual struggles that you could point to and say, oh, this is part of like the cause of them, besides their father, obviously, their father being a horrible person. Overall, it's actually a really good book. I think it's worth the hype that it got, and also worth some of the flack that it got as a story. But honestly, Lauren Asher did an amazing job. She did her big one on this series, and I can see why like a lot of the ending is rushed in terms of like a human perspective of how the story went. Overall, I would say my overall rating for the entire series would be a 3.95, 3.8, 3.9 star rating. Yeah, I would recommend that you should read it. Anyways, until next time, let me know if you like this book reviews so I could do more on books that I have as well as books that I want to read. So anyways, until next time, live beautifully.